Okay. The United States has been the world's police since the end of World War II. The formation and funding of the United Nations is mostly on our part. Many in the world today hate us for what they perceive as our attempts to impose Western views and ideology of human rights upon them. The United States is the reserve economy for the world, and we can no longer afford to do so. It is simply not in the interest of the United States to intervene any longer. The world's economy is dependent on our own, as the Reserve Bank providing bailouts recently as much as $9 trillion in high-risk loans and bailouts to countries and global organizations. According to USDebtClock.org, our national debt is more than $17.5 trillion. GlobalIssues.org shows that in 2011, the Libyan revolution, as short as it was, cost the United States more than $1 billion. It said that globally the world spends more than $1.7 trillion annually on the military. Much of that is the United States. With the economy as it is and the United States dollar on decline, this cannot continue. If you go to UN.org, you can see the structure of the United Nations. They have what is called the P5, which is the permanent 5 members. This includes the United States, Russia, China, Britain, and France. It's hard to actually accomplish anything meaningful in the UN, as the P5 have veto powers. They can veto any resolution they are against, and that puts an end to it right there. In a book called Global Politics by Stephen Lennon, it discusses Rwanda and the failed attempts by the UN to step in, and the genocide was just an atrocity. They stated it would never happen again, and there was a big campaign going on after when things in Darfur started to escalate. There was actually an organization called Never Again, and it was started with a celebrity figure, Mia Farrow. The UN had its hands tied again, as China had national interest in Darfur. So they kept vetoing hundreds of resolutions that came up as we were trying to stop the genocide. More than 1 million people died. In my international relations class, we've currently or recently gone over sovereignty. The UN does not have the right to invade a nation's sovereignty, or they call them states. National sovereignty keeps the country as they are. In order to destroy national sovereignty, we have to have one world government, and countries do not agree that that should occur. Many countries feel that when we intervene, we are in fact invading. Western nations have a different view on human rights and what people are entitled to. If you look at various cultures, few, if any, enjoy the freedoms and human rights that the United States does. An article at globalbrief.org shows interventions of the past occurred when it was in our national interest to do so, or some other country's national interest to do so. Vietnam and the Korean War came about because of our fear of the spread of communism. That was our national interest. The first Gulf War happened supposedly because of our interest in oil. It wasn't until recently that humanitarian or human rights interests have been the cause of going in and intervening in countries. So what national interests are served now? Some say the Cold War is restarting with Putin's KGB USSR attitude. We have nothing to gain any longer from interventions. So we can't afford interventions with our present economy and the decline of the US dollar. The UN is just about worthless, with members of the P5 voting against resolutions that we would like to enact. The world hates and fears us with our Western ideology as a threat to their own beliefs. They feel we are invading their sovereignty. Basically, I feel we need to get back to a pre-World War II way of thinking. We need to worry about ourselves first. It's simply not in the interests of the United States to intervene any longer.